Harley Davidson once meant timeless style and unstoppable freedom. But not every legend survives. In 2025, certain models have collapsed in value, plagued with flaws riders can't ignore. I'm breaking down the 7 machines you should avoid. Watch closely until the end. The final entry proves even Harley's crown jewels aren't safe. Number 7. Harley Davidson Pan America 1250 Standard. When Harley first rolled this tall machine into dealerships, it felt like the company was stepping off the pavement and into entirely new territory. The Pan America was designed to compete with Europe's most trusted adventure bikes, aiming to carry Harley into a fresh segment and attract a different kind of rider. It looked bold, modern, and ready to take on the dirt. Riders who once never imagined Harley in the adventure category were suddenly curious, and the company pushed hard to convince buyers that this was more than just a touring heavyweight in disguise. At the core of the Pan America was a 1,250 cubic centimeter Revolution Max engine, producing 150 horsepower and 94 pound-feet of torque. Dual front monoblock calipers with a single piston rear caliper and advanced anti-lock braking system provided stopping power, though riders reported performance felt better on highways than trails. Showa electronically adjustable suspension front and rear added adaptability, yet consumer reports noted inconsistency on rough terrain. Wet weight stood at 562 pounds with a seat height of 31.1 inches that some found intimidating. The starting price was $17,319, leaving riders divided on value. One rider took the Pan America on a weekend trail run and quickly learned that the promise on paper didn't always translate to dirt. The electronics felt clumsy and an overheating warning cut his ride short. What began with excitement turned into frustration, as he realized the bike demanded more compromise than confidence. At first glance, the numbers looked like a direct answer to the BMW GS and KTM adventure lineups, but the experience did not always match the promise. The Pan America had power to spare and electronics meant to make trail riding more accessible, yet it carried an identity crisis. Harley's traditional core looked at the tall silhouette and quiet Revolution Max engine and saw nothing of the chrome, torquey-heavy heritage they knew. Adventure riders coming from other brands saw a machine without the decades of refinement or proven reliability they trusted on long expeditions. That divide left the bike standing awkwardly between worlds, admired for its ambition but doubted for its staying power. For many owners, the bike was impressive during short test rides but became frustrating in real use. Electronics that seemed innovative on the sales floor sometimes felt clumsy when compared to more intuitive European systems. Reports of overheating and software glitches began to circulate in rider forums, eroding confidence. The styling, angular and futuristic, further distanced the bike from Harley's roots without fully appealing to the adventure crowd. The cultural problem weighed even heavier than the technical one. Harley Davidson was always about attitude, rumbling V-twins, and the idea of freedom stretched across endless highways. The Pan America told a different story, one about technology, electronics, and calculated off-road ability. For a company so tied to heritage, the shift felt unnatural. Riders who bought in early often found themselves isolated, owning a machine that didn't have the aftermarket support, community recognition, or even the mechanic familiarity that other Harleys enjoyed. Instead of becoming a trusted companion for the long haul, the Pan America often reminded its owners of why identity matters as much as horsepower. The next machine doesn't lean on heritage, it gambled on the future, and the results left riders colder than anyone expected. If this breakdown is already saving you from a costly mistake, hit that like button so more riders can see it. And let me know in the comments which Harley you think has lost its magic. Your feedback keeps this conversation alive and helps fellow riders make smarter choices. Number 6. Harley Davidson LiveWire. The idea of Harley producing a motorcycle without pistons hammering away seemed almost unthinkable until the LiveWire rolled onto the stage. For some, it was a vision of the future. For many others, it felt like a betrayal of everything the brand stood for. Riders who had grown up on the unmistakable sound of a V-twin found themselves staring at a silent machine that looked fast but felt foreign. Driving the LiveWire's futuristic core was a permanent magnet electric motor, unleashing 100 horsepower and 84 pound-feet of torque with instant silent force. Dual radial-mounted 4-piston calipers in the front and a single-piston rear caliper worked with an advanced anti-lock braking system, though riders noted the feel was less natural than on traditional Harley models. The chassis featured fully adjustable Showa suspension components front and rear, aiming for sharp handling, but often reported as stiff in consumer reviews. Wet weight came to 549 pounds. Seat height measured 30.7 inches, and the starting price of $29,799 left many questioning long-term value. One rider recalled blasting off the line with instant torque, grinning at how easily the LiveWire hit highway speed. That grin faded when the range dropped faster than expected and a dead charging station left him stranded. The thrill of silence and speed was quickly replaced by the anxiety of limitation. In practice, the LiveWire delivered an explosive launch, able to run from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 3 seconds. That kind of speed impressed sport riders, but Harley's traditional crowd wanted more than numbers. They wanted feel, soul, and sound. The absence of rumble and the lack of vibration meant that the LiveWire rode with a clinical efficiency rather than a raw personality. The styling leaned heavily toward futuristic, and while some admired the sharp lines and exposed motor casing, many riders saw a machine that could have come from any manufacturer rather than Milwaukee. The disconnect between appearance and experience quickly cooled the excitement that Harley tried to build around its first electric project. Living with the LiveWire often proved frustrating. Its claimed 146-mile range dropped in real use, and charging stations were scarce or unreliable, stranding riders. Long trips required constant planning and specialized maintenance added expense, with many dealers unprepared for the demands of an electric powertrain. By 2025, the LiveWire stands less as a breakthrough and more as a reminder of how difficult it is for heritage brands to reinvent themselves. The machine had ambition, speed, and technology on its side, but it lacked the one thing that Harley Davidson built its reputation on: identity. From electric dreams to old-school icons, the next entry proves that style without substance is a road that goes nowhere fast. Number 5. Harley Davidson 48. Among the rows of gleaming cruisers, the 48 has always stood out with its slammed stance, tiny fuel tank, and thick front tire that gives it the look of a custom machine straight from a garage show. The first impression has always been about attitude: low, dark, and undeniably Harley. Beating at the heart of the 48 was a 1,202 cubic centimeter air-cooled V-twin, pushing out 60 horsepower and 73 pound-feet of torque with raw old-school character. Single discs, front and rear, paired with an optional anti-lock braking system handled braking. Though riders often mentioned the setup felt adequate in town, but less confident at highway speeds. Up front sat a 49mm cartridge fork with twin coilover shocks in the rear, shaping the bike's low profile but also a firm ride. Wet weight came to 552 pounds, with a seat height of 28 inches that some riders praised for accessibility. Pricing began at $11,999, though Consumer Reports noted limited comfort and range for daily use. The 48 thrived on style with its peanut tank, blacked-out engine, and minimalist stance, but substance lagged. A 2.1-gallon tank forced frequent fuel stops, and while torque made city rides fun, the bike struggled on highways, leaving riders exposed and frustrated on longer journeys. Many riders discovered that the very design choices that gave the 48 its visual punch also created discomfort. The forward-mounted controls and low seat height forced taller riders into an awkward, stretched posture that felt aggressive at first, but quickly punished the lower back and hips. The short travel shocks meant that rough city pavement or potholes sent sharp jolts up the spine, turning longer rides into endurance tests. Owners often praised how the bike looked parked at the curb, but the praise faded once the ride began. "It's the best-looking bike I've ever owned," one rider admitted, "but after an hour I just want to get off." Technology was another area where the 48 fell behind. While competitors began adding digital displays, traction control, and connectivity options, this machine held on to a basic analog speedometer and little else. There was no fuel gauge, no ride modes, and no modern electronics to make daily life easier. What once felt charmingly simple now seemed outdated and impractical in a market where even budget cruisers offered more functionality. Buyers began to view the 48 less as a daily rider and more as a weekend toy with a very narrow purpose. By 2025, the 48 sits in showrooms and classifieds as a reminder of Harley's sometimes stubborn commitment to tradition. It is still admired for its looks and simplicity, but its lack of comfort, range, and technology have made it a difficult sell to riders who expect more from a motorcycle in this era. What follows is Harley's bold attempt at reinvention, a fresh chapter that looked promising on launch yet stumbled where it mattered most. Number 4. Harley Davidson Sportster S. When Harley announced a new chapter for the Sportster line, the move carried the weight of history. The Sportster name had stood for raw, elemental American muscle since the late 1950s, and expectations for the latest version were sky high. The Sportster S was meant to be the bold reinvention of an icon, aimed squarely at a new generation while carrying the heritage of the past. Powering the spirit of the Sportster was a 1,250 cubic centimeter Revolution Max engine, surging with 121 horsepower and 94 pound-feet of torque that promised modern muscle in a classic name. A single front disc with a radial-mounted 4-piston caliper and a 2-piston rear caliper worked with an advanced anti-lock braking system to provide reliable braking under most conditions. Showa supplied an inverted fork in the front and a single monoshock in the rear, giving the bike a modern stance and sharper handling than older models. Wet weight measured 502 pounds, while seat height came in at 29.6 inches for a slightly elevated posture. Starting prices were set at $14,999, positioning it as a premium option in Harley's middleweight lineup. For many who rode it, the first impression was thrilling. The Sportster S pulled hard, revved clean, and felt unlike any Harley before it. Riders used to the lope and shake of older air-cooled twins suddenly found themselves straddling a machine that delivered acceleration on par with some Japanese sport nakeds. Yet this very strength was also its weakness. While the performance numbers impressed, the experience lacked the visceral connection Harley riders cherished. The exhaust note was subdued, the engine smooth to the point of feeling clinical, and the overall delivery more European than Milwaukee. To longtime Harley owners, it was as though the soul had been engineered out in the pursuit of modern performance. The Sportster S divided riders with its design. Fat tires, a high-mounted exhaust, and low stance looked bold, but handling suffered, heavy at slow speeds and twitchy in corners. A tiny tank limited range under 100 miles, while the forward riding position left many uncomfortable on longer rides. Technology was another double-edged sword. The Sportster S came with a full digital display, multiple ride modes, and rider assist electronics, features unheard of in the old Sportster line. But with those upgrades came complexity that dulled the simple character many buyers expected. Longtime riders were left asking whether the trade-off was worth it. In a market crowded with performance cruisers and sport nakeds from other brands, the Sportster S often struggled to justify its price once the initial excitement faded. By 2025, the Sportster S occupies an uneasy place in Harley's lineup. It is neither the stripped-down, affordable gateway bike of its predecessors, nor a fully competitive performance machine by industry standards. It serves as a reminder that chasing progress without preserving identity leaves a motorcycle stranded between audiences. Reimagining a legend is risky, but trying to fuse performance with touring comfort can be even riskier, as the next heavyweight proved. Number 3. Harley Davidson Street Glide ST. Among the modern touring machines, few motorcycles arrived with more hype than the Street Glide Saint. It was pitched as the answer for riders who wanted the aggressive muscle of a performance cruiser combined with the open road authority of a bagger. On showroom floors, it looked every bit the part, with dark finishes, slammed stance, and a powerful silhouette that promised speed and strength. Commanding the Street Glide Saint was a Milwaukee 8 117 engine, a 1917 cubic centimeter powerhouse, delivering 106 horsepower and 127 pound-feet of torque with unapologetic authority. Dual front 4-piston calipers combined with a single rear 4-piston caliper and an advanced anti-lock braking system provided dependable braking performance in most conditions. Showa dual bending valve forks paired with emulsion rear shocks shaped the ride, balancing stability with stiffness that some riders described as tiring on city roads. Wet weight came in at 827 pounds, while seat height measured 26.7 inches. The starting price was $31,999, positioning it among Harley's premium performance baggers. For those first few rides, the experience could be intoxicating. The big V-twin punched hard with torque that came on early, and the exhaust note carried the presence Harley loyalists expected. On open highways, the bike's weight gave it stability, and the upright posture with a wide fairing created an unmistakable big bagger feel. But as the miles added up, reality began to surface. That same weight, which gave stability at speed, became a burden in slow traffic, parking lots, and city riding. Many riders compared it to moving a small car around on two wheels, and the promise of nimble performance quickly faded in daily use. Comfort was another drawback. With less wind protection and cramped ergonomics, the Street Glide Saint left riders fatigued on longer trips. Its boombox infotainment system felt dated beside modern smartphone integration, while the mix of digital and analog displays struck many owners as awkward on a supposed performance tourer. Competition inside Harley's own stable also played a role in the bike's decline. Many buyers who rode both this model and the Road Glide Saint discovered that the fixed fairing of the Road Glide provided better wind management, greater stability, and a more planted feel in corners. Word of mouth spread quickly, and resale values of the Street Glide Saint fell as buyers gravitated toward its sibling. The used market soon reflected the imbalance, with many low-mileage examples failing to hold anywhere near their original sticker price. By 2025, the Street Glide Saint has become a cautionary tale of a machine designed to walk a fine line but failing to satisfy either side of the market. Touring riders found it lacking the comfort they wanted, while performance-minded riders found it too heavy and dated. It remains a motorcycle with presence and power, but one whose identity struggles to match its ambition. Inside Harley's pursuit of younger riders lies a cautionary tale, one middleweight experiment that simply couldn't find its place on the road. Number 2. Harley Davidson Street Rod 750. In the years when Harley wanted to bring in younger city riders, the Street Rod was rolled out as the bold answer. It was meant to take the accessible street platform and inject it with sharper styling, livelier handling, and a touch of sport attitude. For many, it looked like Harley's chance to compete in the middleweight urban market that had been dominated by other brands. Fueling the Street Rod's urban attitude was a 749 cubic centimeter Revolution X V-twin, generating 70 horsepower and 47 pound-feet of torque with a sharp, street-focused edge. Dual front discs with 2-piston calipers combined with a single rear disc and a 2-piston caliper, all supported by an anti-lock braking system, gave the bike dependable braking for city use. Upgraded suspension featured 43mm inverted forks in the front and dual piggyback shocks in the rear, adding a sportier character than its base sibling. Wet weight measured 516 pounds, while seat height stood at 29.8 inches, a figure many riders felt was tall for its class. The starting price was $8,699, placing it as an entry point into Harley's urban lineup. At first glance, the Street Rod carried itself with energy. The flat bars, small headlamp cowl, and stubby tail section gave it a stripped, modern profile that stood apart from the chrome-heavy cruisers Harley was known for. Riders stepping onto the bike expected it to deliver a sporty experience that blended Harley character with urban agility. On paper, it had enough horsepower to satisfy and a look that hinted at rebellion. But when the wheels met the pavement, many owners found that promise harder to see through. The riding position was tall and cramped, the mid-mounted controls felt unnatural for larger riders, and the balance between city handling and cruiser comfort never quite settled in. The street rod's biggest flaw was its lack of personality. Harley bikes are expected to stir emotion, yet its liquid-cooled engine felt smooth but soulless. Power delivery was steady but uninspiring, sound muted, and rivals at the same price offered stronger performance, reliability, and style. The lack of aftermarket support only made matters worse. Harley riders love to customize, and yet the street rod's unique frame and proportions left fewer options for meaningful personalization. Without the ability to truly make it their own, many owners felt boxed in by a design that already felt divided. The bike became an odd fit, too plain for the faithful, too awkward for the performance crowd, and too limited for long-term satisfaction. By 2025, the street rod is remembered as a missed opportunity. It tried to straddle two worlds and ended up pleasing neither. While it may have been introduced with good intentions, it failed to earn the respect of Harley's core audience and never established credibility with the new riders it sought to win. At the very top of the lineup sat a chrome-laden tourer that was supposed to define luxury only to collapse under its own weight. Before we reveal the #1 Harley on this list, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon. We've got more hard-hitting deep dives on the bikes you ride and the ones you should avoid. Stay tuned, because the truth about these machines is something every rider deserves. Number 1. Harley Davidson CVO Limited. For decades, Harley's custom vehicle operations badge represented the highest point of luxury and performance in the American touring world. The CVO Limited was the bike for riders who wanted everything in one package: long-haul comfort, hand-laid paint, endless chrome, and a motor built to move mountains of weight with ease. It was not just a motorcycle, it was a statement that the owner had reached the very top of the Harley food chain. Crowning the lineup with top-shelf luxury, the CVO Limited was driven by a twin-cooled Milwaukee 8-117, a 1917 cubic centimeter engine delivering 105 horsepower and 126 pound-feet of torque with effortless authority. Reflex Brembo calipers paired with a cornering anti-lock braking system delivered confident braking performance under load. Showa dual bending valve front forks combined with a hand-adjustable rear shock to manage the weight of this full-dress tourer. Wet weight reached 975 pounds, while the seat height stood at 29.9 inches for a commanding yet approachable stance. Starting prices were set at $54,900, marking it as one of Harley's most premium offerings. One rider finally achieved his dream of owning a top-tier Harley, only to discover the weight and complexity made it more burden than freedom. Slow maneuvers became nerve-wracking, and electrical issues sent him back to the dealership more often than the open road. What was meant to be a crowning achievement ended up feeling like an anchor. On the highway, the CVO Limited had presence few bikes could match. The wide fairing blocked wind, the broad touring seat carried both rider and passenger in comfort, and heated grips combined with the infotainment system to create an environment closer to a luxury car than a bare-bones motorcycle. Riders who wanted to cross entire states could do so in a cocoon of comfort, with luggage space and electronics making the journey easier. Yet what looked like the ultimate answer for the open road soon revealed its complications. The sheer size made slow-speed maneuvering difficult, and the weight that kept it stable on the freeway turned into a liability in parking lots, gravel driveways, or even when backing out of the garage. Many riders admitted that what once felt empowering in their younger years became a burden as time passed. Beyond the weight, the complexity of the CVO Limited became its defining problem. The long list of electronics, from the touchscreen to rider safety aids, brought new points of failure. The infotainment system, while impressive when launched, quickly felt outdated compared to modern smartphone integration. Repair bills for electrical issues were steep, and many independent shops refused to touch the model altogether. That left owners dependent on dealerships charging premium labor rates, with parts availability often stretching weeks. Instead of freedom, many riders found themselves chained to service bays, staring at repair invoices that reached into the thousands. By 2025, the CVO Limited has gone from crown jewel to cautionary tale. It is still an imposing motorcycle with undeniable presence, but for most riders it represents too much weight, too much complexity, and too little of the raw essence that made Harley Davidson a household name. The end result is a machine that may look magnificent in a showroom, yet leaves too many owners second-guessing their investment once it is in the garage. And with that, this countdown closes by reminding us that bigger and pricier does not always mean better when it comes to riding the open American road. Every rider wants to believe their Harley will hold value, but as you've seen, not every model stands the test of time. These bikes remind us that heritage doesn't always guarantee performance or investment. If this video helped you dodge a 5-figure mistake, make sure to hit like and drop a comment sharing your thoughts or experiences. Your stories might save another rider from the same trap. And don't forget to subscribe with the bell on, because we've got more unfiltered truths about the machines you ride, the ones you dream of, and the ones to avoid.